Hello everyone, my name is Brendan O'Connell and I'm the Chief Executive of Agritech New Zealand, based here in New Zealand. I'm looking forward to speaking to you today about sustainable agri-tech solutions, and I'll just start sharing a presentation to take you through a little bit about Agritech New Zealand and also some of the work that's happening here in New Zealand relating to Agritech. So Agritech New Zealand is an industry organization that connects all of the interests in New Zealand around Agritech. So that includes our research organizations, our government agencies, an investor community, established Agritech businesses and new and emerging Agritech businesses. You know, we have 162 members. For Agritech from New Zealand is a significant, you know, whilst our primary produce is a major part of our GDP, Agritech in itself is also a significant contributor and a growing contributor of GDP for New Zealand. Obviously, it supports. We say it has a sort of a 4 times impact on our economy. First and foremost, of course, it improves our primary sectors' productivity and sustainability, which we'll talk a little bit about today. For us, of course, agri-tech development happens in the region. So just from a regional development and a national development point of view, it's a very important part of our economy because we have businesses established in different parts of the country, which is important. For us, agri-tech itself is an export class. We're looking at collaborating and sharing the intellectual property that we develop with farming systems around the world and with researchers and collaborators around the world, which is why we're delighted to join you today and to look for opportunities of sharing knowledge and building systems together. And ultimately, of course, the fourth impact is a truly global impact in terms of food security and environmental and climate change challenges that we have. So we have great aspirations for Agritech from New Zealand. In terms of the technologies, of course, many of us, and this will be similar in every part of the world, we've been talking about emerging technologies for a long time, but in reality, those emerging technologies are no longer emerging. You know, when we look across the range of commercialized activities that have come from our research organizations here in New Zealand and partnerships with other people around the world, what we see is real examples of these technologies now being placed and understood, and a growing awareness of what that means. So we're sort of moving beyond looking at the technologies as being interesting things themselves to seeing what their applications really mean in terms of the additional things outside of the technology that needs to happen. So things like support systems, education systems, training systems to enable the real use of these tools on farm. And then more and more what the interoperability is between these systems, how data can be shared, which is technically very easy, but requires good human interoperability in terms of data standards. There's a lot of work that's going on in New Zealand right now, as well as the governance structures to enable data sharing between different devices. Just looking through some of the examples from New Zealand, we're obviously well known for our livestock solutions, and similar to yourselves, dairy has been a big part of New Zealand's agricultural productivity growth over the last 40 years, as is our sort of sheep and beef industries. So now we're looking at new methods of livestock management. You know, in New Zealand, we talk about having reached peak milk, and I think we will start seeing some reductions in our overall livestock populations as we see some rebalancing of land use. And so the opportunity there is really to look at greater productivity per animal. Less animals, but more productivity from those animals within sustainable systems. Similar to different parts of the world, this remote management of livestock has different forms. You have the sort of GPS-enabled systems, which gives individual management insight and control at different times. Also, we have remote management systems where we are able to capture regular data, such as weights on animals, because you you're building enclosures around some sort of attractant, of course, water in Australia and many other parts of the world. But it could be what we call lollies or treats in terms of other minerals or foodstuffs that are attractive to animals and brings them to one place. And so they can gradually be trained to get used to this equipment. And when they walk in to get the treat, we're gathering data on those animals. Of course, when it comes to sustainable production, you can't manage what you don't measure. And so there's a lot of focus as well on new sensor types for pasture sensors, for soil sensors, which are measuring both moisture. They're using conductivity to do nutrient movement through the ground, and other attributes of both soil and moisture. Beyond sort of soil moisture, we've had some really important work in New Zealand, given the importance of our waterways and what that means for us here in New Zealand as we rebalance our farming systems and look at improving our waterways, but also what that means in terms of catchment areas around the world as well. So companies like Riverwatch here are introducing IoT-based devices which connect easily on board, which have a large number of sensors that again are presented in a way that makes it, in addition to being a research tool, a tool that either catchment area groups or individual farmers or groups themselves can use to get new insights into what the water quality around their area is. We're also seeing, in terms of moving to full carbon farming systems, just the interesting use of artificial intelligence in New Zealand. We have large areas of different types of forestry. So we have commercial forestry, we have native forests, and we have native bush. And of course, farmers are able to map these areas. And most of the common ways of doing that are effectively average estimations, manual estimations done by consultants and experts. But now we're seeing use of mapping tools with artificial engines being trained to be able to discriminate between different types of bush, different types of trees, to do the proper carbon assessments for those, and then to automate the process of registering those carbon sinks. Of course, in addition to some of the, I guess, if New Zealand is known, the traditional farming systems, such as livestock and dairy, there's a lot of innovations coming from our research groups and commercial organizations that are looking at non-traditional farming systems or farming systems that are used around the world, both in terms of vertical farms and some of these virtual agronomy solutions for controlled environment agriculture. So this company, Way Beyond, have some physical sensors in terms of those devices there that are doing various environmental sensing connected in these environments. But again, presenting that through as a virtual agronomist for growers. So easy presentation of data, integration of that data with other sources, which I think is a real part of the maturity of these systems going forward. Of course, all of these solutions are the sort of set of examples from all of the ecosystem that's coming out of New Zealand are fundamentally driven by our research organizations. So this sort of subsystem within a larger ecosystem. This is the real driver of a lot of what happens. I think some of the evolution that's happening here in New Zealand is a better integration of how these research organizations operate with our startup economy and our investor economy. So I know even groups like AgResearch and Plant and Food Research, they now have some of their research scientists taking part in startup accelerators and looking at commercial paths for the researchers to take their products out into the world. So it's a different model of extension. Rather than using, I guess, science specialists and extension networks from universities, it's looking at this way of connecting with people in the ecosystem that brings investment and a private sector commercial focus as the driver for getting that work out there. So As you may be aware, we have this rich ecosystem of researchers and applied research from groups like PlantTech and Lincoln Agritech. So that's a very quick overview of some of the things that are happening in New Zealand. I really hope this summit and conference goes well, and I'm very happy to answer further questions in this forum or going forward in different ways. Thank you for your attention and time.